Welcome to Turning the Page, a Lexington Public Library podcast. I'm Mariam.
And I'm Erin West. If you love the library because of books, the programs, and the people behind both, then this is the podcast for you.
And even if you don't, there's still fun to be had. We will bring you the latest book releases that are worth checking out, figuratively and literally.
And we will discuss all of the happenings at the library to look out for.
And of course, what would a library podcast be without a special guest? We will get to know some special authors that are making an impact on our local literary scene.
Whether you're listening to us in your car while washing dishes or snuggled up with a warm drink, we are grateful for your time and hope you enjoy.
Welcome back to Turning the Page. Today we're delighted to welcome Melissa Scholes Young. Melissa is an award-winning novelist, essayist, editor, and professor whose work explores family, place, identity, class, and the stories we tell ourselves about home. Originally from Hannibal, Missouri, the hometown of Mark Twain, Melissa has written 2 acclaimed novels, Flood and The Hive. Her essays have appeared in publications including The Atlantic, The Washington Post, Literary Hub, and Poets and Writers. She's also the editor of several Grace and Gravity anthologies celebrating women writers, and she serves as a professor in the MFA in Creative Writing program at the University of Kentucky. In addition to writing and teaching, she's the owner of the upcoming Bond House Books in Lexington. Her work has earned numerous honors, including the Shelf Unbound Best Book Award and the Next Generation Indie Book Award. Melissa, welcome to the podcast. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me. I'm happy to be here.
Oh, it's so good to finally meet you. We've been kind of discussing things over email, and it's nice to have you in the studio now. So tell us a little bit about yourself before we get started, where you grew up, what brought you to Lexington.
So I actually grew up in rural Missouri. I was born and raised in a little town called Hannibal, which most readers have heard of. It's another famous author from there as well.
Yes.
And I am a novelist. I also write essays. I'm a poet. And I moved to Lexington more than a year ago to start teaching creative writing at the University of Kentucky.
Yeah.
So I had been in D.C., Washington, D.C. for the last 15 years teaching creative writing at American University.
Oh, wow.
Directing the undergraduate creative writing program there. I've traveled a lot. And D.C. had started to very much feel like home, but I wanted to actually come back home, come back to the Midwest, come back to this region and see what Lexington had to offer.
Yeah.
So it's been a great start. It's a complete surprise. I think a lot of people say that about Lexington.
Yes.
It's a wonderful surprise to live here.
Yes. It's like a spot in Kentucky that has just been a haven for a lot of people, I think. When did you first realize that you wanted to write, that it's something that you enjoyed, that you wanted to do as a career instead of just, something to do on the side?
I don't know that I understood it could be a career. I don't think being raised on a dirt road as a first-gen college student, the idea of careers comes up very much, right? We have jobs where I'm from, and I didn't know writing was a thing you could do as a career. But I understand.
Even as you came from a town that, that's
right.
Mark Twain has been
exactly
is known for. So.
Exactly. But I grew up in a family pest control business where we went to work every single day. But there were always stories all around and there was always storytelling. And I understood from a very young age that I was a storyteller.
Yeah.
Sometimes my family would call it a liar, which I think many storytellers sort of are. We invent things, we make up stories, we sort of create the worlds that I think we need to kind of live in. But I think becoming successful at it happened when I was quite young. I was corrupted in about 3rd grade. I won a writing contest very early on, and I think it gave me the type of encouragement that, I don't know, it's dangerous to give kids that young. But I won a writing contest for Mother's Day.
Yeah.
And it was who had the best mom, why your mom was the best mom. And my entire entry was that I have the best mom because I have the best dad, and the best dads pick the best mom, the end. That was the entire entry. And they put me on a flatbed truck with my mom on Mother's Day and said that I was a writer. And they gave me a $10 gift certificate to Ponderosa, the steakhouse.
I remember, we had a Ponderosa here in Lexington too,
That'll just ruin you, right? Like you get paid for your words for the first time. And people
in 3rd grade.
3rd grade. And then people are listening to you, right? And I think I understood that stories were just a place that I wanted to spend my time in. And I was a very early reader in public libraries, of course, and it just mattered to have that kind of access. So I don't think I really thought of myself as a writer until I went to do my MFA. Actually, when after my second child, I was in my mid-30s. I was a non-traditional student going back to school. I taught high school for a decade at that point, and so I was always around books. I was always around stories, but I think it took me a little bit longer to realize I wanted to do this professionally.
Yeah. And then you released your book. Tell us a little bit about your first book, which is called The Flood. I know you've written a lot more before then, but Flood, I think, kind of put you on the map, sort of.
It did. And Flood was my debut novel. The Hive was my second novel, and I've just finished my third.
Oh, wow.
So I think of myself as a novelist first. I mean, Flood was sort of the first story I knew I had to tell about being from Hannibal and asking that big question. Not can you go home again? Because I'm interested in that, but I think a lot of books have been written about that. I was more interested in what happens if you have to, right? Like what happens in a hometown that has all this mythology of Mark Twain? What happens when you have to turn your life back around? Yeah. Right? I think we sometimes think of these rural communities and hometowns as these really hard dichotomies. You have to leave or you have to go, and those are it. And I was much more interested in a nuanced question in Flood. And I'd grown up with all these statues of, Tom Sawyer, Huckleberry Finn, all over our tourists downtown specifically. And I just wondered what that friendship would look like if it was female. Yeah. So I wrote the book. I wrote Flood because that was the book I needed to read. So that was my first novel. Yeah.
And when you wrote it, how much of what you lived in Hannibal was reflected in that story? Because a lot of it is about coming home, but it's also about seeing the stories of your town from a grown-up view, from a different view. So how much of it was influenced by your own experience living in Hannibal?
I think so much of what we do as writers is look back, right? We listen, we pay attention, we ask questions. All of my novels start with questions. Yeah. And I think so much of Flood is about that question of if you did return 10 years later. And I left my hometown when I was 17, and I haven't lived there again. But I was curious about the way it looked different after I had left. The way that I loved it more after I had left. And this is, also following the steps of Mark Twain. He wrote his best work once he had left and looked back on it, on a place. It takes, I think, that kind of distance and also interrogation. Right? Like, I think when we love something, we ask questions about it. Yeah. And I think that we have an outsider's view on something that really is kind of for insiders. And I think writers are always on the outside. Yeah. We're always paying attention and poking at things. We're observing. I think writers even sort of hear what's under we're not just listening to a conversation, we hear what's underneath the conversation. We're not just looking at the ground, we hear what's underneath the ground. And I think that's sort of, our superpower. But I very much wanted to write Flood as an empathetic story. I wanted to look back with not just nostalgia, but also empathy and toward my characters. So the main character, Laura Brooks, is certainly not me. But she shows up in all of my novels, and so does her best friend Rose. She shows up in all my novels also. So these characters are kind of casts, in a fictional world I'm creating, but they mean a lot to me. Yeah. And they change, and they're complicated. And I like that about characters. I like that about people. Yeah.
Characters that kind of stick with you, and you feel like, where can I take this next?
Yeah, that just continue to speak, but also change and grow. And part of what's been fun about writing a character in Flood in 1993 and then 2003, and then The Hive came. The Hive came a decade later. Is set a decade later in Cape Girardeau, also in rural Missouri, and then my next novel is set 2022. So, but the characters have changed and grown, and that's been really exciting to see where they've gone in life too. Yeah. The part of Flood I think that's probably closest to my life is looking back on the flood of 1993 and what that
in Missouri,
Missouri, in the country, and what that really did to our economy, to our way of life. Yeah. When you grow up looking at the Mississippi River, you watch it, right? We watch water. We check flood stages the way other people check weather reports. And water is this amazing life force, but it's also always a constant threat.
Yeah.
And so it's led to a lot of inspiration in my work. There's always the Mississippi River in my work.
Well, we talk about how nature can become a character a lot on this podcast, especially for writers that live in Kentucky. Nature and the outdoors has its own character plot almost. So, I mean, and that's kind of what the Mississippi River was for you in the flood. So, and it's a beautiful river. It's got its own rich history, but it's its own character, you know.
It is, and it is something we keep trying to control and failing at controlling, and it's affecting so many of the river towns, right? The way that river towns have always relied on it. The third novel I just finished was really inspired by the not the flood, but the drought.
Yeah.
And what it means to have a river that moves 500 million tons of cargo and suddenly has a drought that is stopping things from moving.
Yeah.
Right? What does it mean when not just a flood, which we talk about all the time, but what does a drought actually mean also?
Yeah.
So I'm fascinated by the ways that we have to interact, have to rely on, try to control the natural world, but it's water is something I always need to watch and understand where it is. It's the first thing that happens when I get to a new city.
Yeah.
And in fact, when I moved to Lexington, I said to my realtor, this is the very first time I've never lived on water. And he said, oh, don't worry, it's underground. He said, it is all around you. There are streams and rivers underneath your feet.
Yes.
And I found that completely fascinating that I had found, again, a water source, but a deeper one to dig to.
Exactly. So we've got maybe some creeks and streams here or there. You can drive to the Kentucky River if you want. But
I can.
Yeah. So, of course, we talked about Hannibal as being the hometown of Mark Twain. How has his legacy, if at all, affected or influenced your writing?
That's always a very complicated question when you grow up with his legacy sort of being a mythology also,
yes.
right? And so much of our tourist industry in Hannibal is built on that mythology, and it's also built with good intentions on a very narrow story, right? We tell the story in Hannibal of Tom Sawyer, and it's a very comfortable American nostalgia story. And I think Hannibal is really starting to tell a more complicated, dig deeper, ask bigger questions, and really hold some space for different narratives that have always been there anyway. So I think it's complicated to be from any place that has deep historical roots and defines itself very narrowly by those roots. Yeah. But it also means that stories all around are prioritized, right? And so for me growing up there, the most important thing was not actually the stories of Mark Twain. It was the public library. It was having access to stories. I mentioned that I'm a first-generation college student, which means my parents didn't graduate from college. They worked very, very hard, but they understood what it meant to drop me off at the public libraries so I could stop bothering them and read all the time. And so books were a big part of growing up. Stories were a big part of me finding a future that looked closer to what I was sort of imagining for myself. Yeah. And they were always very supportive of that. I had a lot of older brothers that were on different paths and interested in very different things. So I think they didn't always know what to do with all my questions. But I just asked so many questions, and I found a lot of those answers in books. But I also know that growing up in the way I did gave me a lot of freedom, right? I had access to creeks and to the cornfields, and I had access to go down to the chicken coop, and I had tons of room to roam. And that, I think, has always influenced my work. And I think it also influences a lot of my teaching, because I can understand what it's like to live in an urban environment. And I can also be very, very comfortable in a very small community with, rural people as well.
Yeah. Well, speaking of questions, your next book, The Hive, recently came out. About a year ago or so?
It came out a few years ago. Right. It came out a few years ago. It takes me a few years to write these books. But usually because I'm doing other things like editing and teaching and doing other things in the community. So I want to say it came out in 2023. Someone's going to look that up and they're going to laugh, but I don't actually know.
I believe you're right.
I think it did too, right? Yeah.
I believe you. So tell us a little bit about the Hive. I know it's about 4 sisters, which kind of triggers something for me because I'm one of 4 sisters.
Are you
Yes.
really? Then you have to tell me if this resonates, because that's one of my favorite things is when readers say, "Oh, you understand sisters."
Yes.
And I don't, right? Because I had all these brothers, but I very much wanted 4 sisters. And so I wanted to figure out family business. I grew up in a family business. I'm opening a family business here in Lexington. I'm very interested in family business dynamics, but I wanted to understand what happens when succession isn't clear in the family business, right? So it often traditionally in American society has gone to the male heir, and that's certainly changing. But I wanted to know, if you had 4 sisters, how that kind of succession was sorted.
Yeah.
But
when the lines are blurred between business and family.
Oh, they are not just blurred. I mean, blurred is a kind word for what happens in a family business.
Erased.
Erased. Absolutely erased in all the lovely and treacherous ways.
Yeah.
But the Hive actually started with a bigger question about, and all my novels start with a question, right?
Yes.
And the Hive started with this question of what's that line between sort of preparedness and paranoia, especially during the pandemic.
Yeah.
I was thinking, and I wrote it right before the pandemic. I did not mean to accidentally write a novel about a mother who was preparing for a pandemic and an apocalypse.
Yeah.
Writers pay attention.
Happened.
It just happened that that's what I was writing about. I was really curious about that line. Like, what would you do to save your family?
Yeah.
And where does preparedness, having some water in your house and having things that your family and community and your medicines and plans, where does that line turn to paranoia that would justify you doing things within your community that you wouldn't imagine yourself being able to do, to collect resources and to not share them with your community? I've always lived in really strong communities. Lexington's one of the best I've ever been to. And I'm enjoying it so much. And I know what it means to have to rely on a neighbor, what it means to have to know what's happening in other people's lives in a way that means you support them. So I was very curious about that question. What would it take, for someone like Grace, who's the mother of the matriarch of the family, to prepare her family for a natural disaster? And it very much, I think, used to be the idea of a natural disaster seemed extreme. Prepping seemed extreme.
Yeah.
I grew up on, I guess, what you would call a homestead now. Like it was just a very normal way of living, that we had chickens and pigs and grew corn and watermelon and shared with our neighbors. And my uncles lived on the same road and they had cattle, and everyone took care of themselves that way and shared resources because it was 20 miles to town.
Yeah.
And so I grew up very much on, I guess, what you would call a homestead. We didn't call it that. We just made do. Like, this is what you do, right? Yeah. You can't get anywhere.
That's just the buzzword we use now.
Yeah. So the novel came out of that idea of asking the question about paranoia versus preparedness. But I had to do research for the Hive, and that was probably my favorite part. I really like the research part of writing novels.
Okay.
For this book that I just finished, I loved, going back to the water and canoeing and being back in nature and thinking about the miles of the Mississippi River and lock and dam systems, and how do you move a canoe through a lock and dam system. And for the Hive, I actually went to prepper camp.
Okay.
Which is a real thing. I'm not making that up, I swear. The things in my books that people swear I have made up are absolutely true. And then the things that are, true, and that's true of also characters that you write about. People are always seeing themselves in my book, and they are nothing like the people in my life. But people, the readers see what they want to see. I mean, I think once you write a book, it becomes the reader's book, right?
Yeah.
It's no longer in your possession
out in the
at all,
world.
right?
Yeah.
So for the Hive, I went to prepper camp, and it's a 3-day wilderness camp that's in North Carolina. And I was expecting sort of like a gun show kind of camp, and it turned out to be more of homesteaders, people who wanted to learn what they could eat off the land, people who wanted to know how to store water, people who wanted to know how to create, use solar energy. It was much more a hippie camp than what I thought it was
sort
going
of
to be.
Self-sustainability.
Absolutely. And that spoke to me. That made so much more sense to me than some of the stereotypes about prepping that were happening on television shows and that just didn't resonate with me. Yeah. So I was much more interested in a character that really believed she was going to save her family by paying attention to the resources they needed and building those resources in preparation. And I think that seemed very extreme at the time, but with the amount of extreme weather events that we're having and the droughts and the floods, like that doesn't seem so far off now to be able to have those actual skills. And I think it is a matter of skills. It's not just resources and sort of collecting things. It's a matter of knowing how to do things.
With it.
Right? And knowing who your neighbors are, knowing who your community is, asking where you're invested. So that book very much came out of that big question. When I wrote Flood, the first novel, I included the Tom and Becky pageantry. It's a contest that we have in my hometown to become the national Tom Sawyer and the national Becky Thatcher and represent tourism, right? Represent our industry. And they study for a year, and they learn the history of not just Mark Twain, but of our town, and they research their costumes. And so I was so fascinated to go back and be a part of the competition, but people think I made that up. They don't believe that that's a real thing either. It's very, very real. Yeah. I mean, the character in my novel that's in the contest is fictional, and he shows up in other books as well. But I was also interested in asking this question about class. Like, this is a kind of competition in my hometown that requires you to have resources that not every kid has. Yeah. So I think all my novels are really about class too.
Yeah. So how did you come up with the title, The Hive? What significance does it have?
I could tell you a great story about the metaphor of the hive, but I think so many titles are actually unintentional, or I'm bad at them. Every title that I sell my books under isn't the title it's published under. Editors have a lot of say in titles, and I don't object to any of them. They've done well for me. Flood is about, a flood and the metaphor, and specifically also about that moment where in 1812 where the Mississippi River ran backwards.
Oh, wow. Yes.
And which, of course, was because of the earthquake, New Madrid fault line. And the Hive, we originally called it Bug Girls because the four sisters, that's what I was called growing up. You were either a bug guy or a bug girl. Yeah. But it with my rural accent, it doesn't sound right in microphones. So the Hive made a lot more sense. It made a lot more sense for looking at the ways that bees interact. Specifically, the family uses the method where the bees are a little bit more democratic and they can move throughout the hive. And sort of, I was interested in that idea of secession not being sort of a patriarchal system where it's handed down and there's clear boundaries, but I was much more interested in what it might look like if it were more cooperative. Yeah. Where a family business could be more democratized. And the type of hive that the bees survive in for Grace's prepping, the main character's prepping, is much more of a cooperative hive.
Everybody's got something to do.
Everybody has their role, but the roles are equally important, and the bees can actually move between without quite the same restrictions, and I'd say sort of patriarchal system that's much more of a hierarchy and a top-down approach. Yeah. So I think the hive works, yes, as the hive of the Feller family, but also, and bees are really important, of course, to Grace, the main character, as far as survival. And what's happening to bees, what's happening in climate change to bees is, every beekeeper in our country worldwide is sounding alarms. Yes. About the ways that the hives are changing.
It's not just the honey, it's the pollination, it's
every single part of our food source. Yeah. Right. So it's not something that we can ignore.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, speaking of family businesses, you talked about opening your own family business. You want to talk to us a little bit about that?
I would love to. I'm so excited about this. We are opening a independent bookstore in Lexington next year. It's called Bond House Books, which is named after the historic property. It will be in the downtown. Right now, we're operating Bond House Books as a pop-up. We're doing events. We're selling books where books are sold, where author events are. We've done pop-ups for Lexington Pride, for Louisville Pride, for Richmond. We're going to be at the Renaissance Fair, different communities around Kentucky that, we're looking for bookstores. Okay. And we're very, very excited to open it. We're learning a lot. We're all readers, and Bond House Books is building a house of readers. This idea that there's a community space where readers come together, where there are craft classes, where there are author discussions, where there are writer workshops, but really a community space where people who want to talk about ideas and want to, sit around a table right? I think of bookstores, I think of family businesses as civic institutions also. And Lexington's a great place for that. We already have so many places where people gather here, and it makes sense to me to open a bookstore in the downtown.
Yeah.
So my partner, Izzy Scholes Young, who is a local artist, I happen to be related to them as well, but they're a local artist, a reader. They're earning their MBA at UK, so they're studying business. And most importantly, they work at the public library.
Yes.
They work at Central Branch. So
Yes.
we're learning so much about the community. We've always been a house of readers, but it's our dream to open a bookstore.
Yeah.
And so Lexington's a place where that dream for me can finally come true.
Yeah. I'm really looking forward to it because I think that is a kind of a hole in downtown, especially.
I think there should be an independent bookstore in every block, in every community. That's
Yes, yes, you're preaching to the choir over here. I think so too. But I love that you're kind of laying the groundwork first before you do open up the brick and mortar, because it is part of being a community, being a bookstore user and an owner and everything. So it is, when you're in a bookstore, you do feel connected, not just to the books, but the people in it too. So I love that.
We're learning a lot.
Yeah.
We're learning, especially at the pop-ups we've done. We just did one 2 weekends ago down at Voidsaki. It was an outdoor night market. And we're just learning what people are reading.
Yeah.
And we're learning what people are interested, because what readers are interested in Lexington, Kentucky is sometimes different than what people want from the New York Times bestseller list.
Exactly.
Right? I have read probably 100 Kentucky authors in the last year. And of course, they're regional and amazing, and so many readers from Kentucky want to read Kentucky authors.
Yeah.
So I knew when I joined the University of Kentucky that I was joining a legacy of amazing regional writers.
Yeah.
But I also understood that there was a much wider and a local network of local authors that I want to have in the bookstore. And it's been really amazing to learn from the readers. What they want to read. Is it paperback? Is it hardback? Are we interested in new releases? Right? It's been a learning experience. And people have been so welcoming and so excited about the bookstore. And I think that by the time we open next year, which is not that far away,
it's not.
we will know even more. We'll be even more a part of this community.
That's amazing. We look forward to it.
Me too.
You mentioned that you do have a book coming out, and is it finished, or are you still writing it? Or has it been out to the publishers?
I am always writing it. Readers are always writing. I have a book coming out in the fall. That's my first collection of poetry.
Yeah.
And that book is finished, done. It'll be out in October. It's called Another Word for Longing, Saudaji. And it's actually being published by a local publisher in Georgetown, Kentucky, Finishing Line Press.
Yeah. So can you pronounce that again?
I can. It's the book title is called Another Word for Longing, Saudaji.
Saudaji, okay.
Right. It's a Portuguese word for this type of nostalgia, and the book is very much a love letter to the years I lived in Brazil, and I was newly married when I lived there, so it's also about a young marriage. And I wrote it. I mean, I've been writing these poems for 2 decades. Wow. And they've been sitting with me, and I've been wrestling with them, and learning Portuguese was such an important part of living in Brazil for so many years. And again, observing and asking and being an insider and then an outsider, and looking at it through an outside lens. And all of my work, I think, does that quite a bit. So this book comes out in October. It is done, and I'm very excited to share it. I'm also, as all debut writers are, nervous to call myself a poet. I'm a novelist. I'm an essayist, but it turns out I'm a poet as well. So that book comes out in October. I'm very excited to share it. The cover art for it actually is an original painting that I own. I bought a lot of folk art, a lot of street art in Brazil, and we were able to use one of the paintings for the cover of it. And so much of the book is about painting and color and light and the way it shows up in a country like Brazil that values art so much. And then my third novel is done, out to publishers now. And I mean, it's done. It's not edited yet, but the novel itself is finished. And it is a Thelma and Louise canoe trip down the Mississippi River. It was really the most fun to write. I was interested in, my main character drives her kid to college and then just can't seem to drive home.
Yeah.
And I'm very interested in sort of middle age renewal and
Redefining,
asking the big questions that maybe you've been putting off because you are occupied and busy raising families and doing that important work. But suddenly everything is up in the air again, right?
Yeah.
And there's a real gift of that, I think. So she has trouble driving home, and she ends up on an adventure of her own. And part of that adventure, the canoe trip that's down the Mississippi River, allows her to take up with a gang of women pirates.
Wow.
Which I very much needed in my life. So again, I think we write the books we need.
Yeah.
And I very much wanted there to be vigilante justice along the Mississippi River. And so
that sounds amazing.
Yeah.
I'm looking forward to that one.
I am too. I'm
Yeah.
excited.
What books are you currently reading that you can't stop recommending to people?
Oh my gosh, that's a dangerous question.
Yeah.
For a
I think
writer.
writers are such good book recommenders, because they know.
Right. And writers have to be readers.
Yeah.
I mean, every time someone asks me what it takes to be a writer, I just ask, what are you reading? Which is the same thing I ask in the bookstore. What are you reading? What are you interested in? Because I don't think there's a way to read wrong.
Yeah.
And what you're interested in is probably the best place for you to be reading. So that's a big question. What I'm reading this year, best book I've read this year is Kin by Tayari Jones, Atlanta writer. I always pre-order anything that she writes. I love her stories so much. I love that
She wrote American Marriage for our listeners.
Which is such an important. I think that was the first book of hers I read, and then I read her whole back list. I love when I fall in love with an author and can read every single thing that they wrote. One of the best books I've read this year is Whistler by Ann Patchett.
Okay,
which was a bit of a surprise. I mean, I've read probably a dozen of her books. I've known her career for so long, but this is such a contemplative, meditative book. It's the right book for right now.
Yeah.
It has so many answers in it about looking back, about looking forward, about thinking about the different directions that your life could have taken. I absolutely loved Whistler. I read this summer Birds of Opulence by Crystal Wilkinson.
Okay, yeah.
It's a masterpiece. And I decided this fall at UK to teach. Crystal will be teaching again at UK this fall. And so I decided I wanted to teach her work so that she could visit the class and have my students have the opportunity of having, a legend like Crystal in the classroom.
Yeah.
And so I've read all of her short story collections. And Birds of Opulence is a book we sell a lot at Bond House Books.
Yeah.
It's just a stunning collection. So I've read that book maybe 3 times this summer as well. There's so many good books that are out. Shauna Morgan's poetry debut is beautiful. It's called Ground Provisions.
Okay.
And it's from a press out of UK. And she's doing a lot of local events around here too. In nonfiction, I just read a book called Tony at Random, which is about Toni Morrison's life as an editor at Random House.
Oh.
And
I didn't know she was. Okay.
She was an editor at Random House, and this is all about her career. It's written by Dana A. Williams, who's a professor at Howard. And I teach a class at UK called Literary Editing and Publishing, and it's the class that makes art a business. It's the class that teaches you as a writer everything that you need to know about
the business end.
About the business end.
Yeah.
And I think we're much too precious. We want to pretend that art just pops out into the world. And I want that to be true too. But the fact is it's an actual business, and knowing the business of it makes you a better artist.
Yeah.
So I teach about agenting and publishing and the rules of editing and that long trajectory, about big business proposals and about how to make a career in editing, because there's a lot of careers in editing.
Yeah.
And there's not always sustainable careers as an author. But I think becoming a better editor makes you a better writer. So this nonfiction book about Tony, it's called Tony at Random. I read a lot this summer, especially second books, like Melissa Falavino's debut novel called Hemlock just came out, and her collection of stories called Tomboyland is about the Midwest. That I loved that. I actually checked it out from Central Branch. Hemlock's down there. I returned it, so someone else can have
That
it.
sound you hear, listeners, is my pen writing down all these titles.
These are such good books. There's so many good books. The funnest book that I read this summer is actually by Emma Straub, and it's she's so fun, and it's called
Yeah.
Hold on. I have
Her latest one.
It's her latest one, and it's about a boy band on a cruise ship.
Yes.
It's called American Fantasy.
Yes.
And that was really a lot of fun to read this summer. And the book that I'm most excited to come out right now is by Disha Phalia, and she wrote a collection of short stories called The Secret Lives of Church Ladies.
Oh, yes. I saw that. Yeah.
Delicious.
I'm really into short stories now just because it's, they're nice bursts of reading.
You can read them. You can read one a night.
Yes.
You can.
Yeah.
But her debut novel, which is called The Confessions of Lady Friedman, is coming out. It might be out already.
Yeah.
But I know that's a book that will definitely stop.
Lots of good books.
I know.
Lots
We
of
could
good
talk books all day long.
Yes. Well, Melissa, we usually end our podcast with our guests with a rapid fire question series. So
Okay, I'm ready.
if you're game,
I'm game.
Okay. You ready?
Yes.
Okay. So coffee or tea?
Oh, both. Espresso and Earl Grey with a little bit of milk.
Nice.
Yes.
Writing early in the morning or late at night?
Anytime. Anytime. You can't do it wrong unless you don't do it. I am an early morning writer. I do my best work in the morning, but I do my editing usually at night or in the afternoons. So
after you've had time to kind of absorb, or
I like early morning brain before the house gets up.
Yeah.
It's just me and my dog, and I'm not quite awake. And so I think there's not as much sort of judgment in there.
That's interesting.
Yeah, it's a little bit more free. I can make lots of mistakes. I don't care. It's usually my best work. And
so more subconscious than conscious.
Definitely. But I think some people get into that space late at night.
Yeah.
I think because I've always been a teacher, a professor, and a mom, the day hours require more of me. And so I'm not as, but I do a lot of editing at night. My brain can look at work in a much more analytical way at night. So you can't do it wrong unless you don't do it.
And the favorite spot to write in?
Ooh, my favorite. I don't know that I can be that precious. I've written books in the car pickup line at elementary school. I've written books. I do have a beautiful home office, and I also have an amazing office on the 13th floor of the Patterson office tower that has an amazing view, actually, of Lexington. So I think I write everywhere. I always have my journal on me. I always have a journal in my purse. Everything to me is material. I'm listening. All the time and writing things down. I am. I think we think writing has to be done sort of strictly at a desk with a computer or paper. And I think if we give ourselves more permission, I'm out walking my dog and I'm thinking about a plot, or I'm driving my car and I'm, thinking about dialogue. I think if we think of our lives as writing all the time, we're kinder to ourselves. And I definitely want to write to a voice that's kind to myself rather than the one that's sort of punitive.
Yeah.
Like, why aren't you writing enough? Well, you're not doing it correctly. So I don't know when I'm not writing.
Yeah. What is a book you wish you could read again for the first time?
Mother of Sorrows by Richard McCann. I had the honor of teaching with him for a few years at American University.
Interesting.
And it's a fiction, it's a memoir, it crosses that line, but I think it's the language that I would like to, I've probably read it a dozen times, but I would like to rediscover it and find out that people can write that way again. Because I remember when I first read it, thinking that, but I also felt that way about every single thing Bobby Ann Mason has ever written.
Bobby Ann Mason.
I mean, I just didn't know people could write about rural communities in such a generous and sophisticated way.
Yeah.
And avoid the stereotypes and tell the truth.
Yeah.
And I remember in graduate school reading her for the first time and realizing that this is exactly the kind of stories I wanted to tell.
What character do you relate to the most from your own books?
I want to say Grace, who's the prepper, because I'm a planner. I have a lot of spreadsheets.
Yes.
I do a lot of that in my own writing as well. But I actually think my new character, Becca, in my third novel may be revealing quite a bit about myself. Wanting to, the importance specifically in her life of reinvention, of questioning, of taking risks. And I think the bookstore is a kind of risk, right? Opening up my own business, in midlife seems like a large risk and a glorious.
Would this be your first business?
Well, I grew up in this family business, right? I grew up in the family pest control industry. So I understand family business, but I think being an author is always a type of business also. But I think it will be my first business that I have invented and dreamed of and
on
made.
Your own.
Yeah. So I think Becca's taking that kind of risk. I also think Becca's story is about female friendship. And that has become the most important thing in my life.
Yeah.
So I think that this next novel actually might be the one that reveals even more of me, than I meant to. Are
What's your favorite snack while writing?
we supposed to eat when we're writing?
I eat all the time.
Just mainline espresso and Earl Grey. Let me think. My favorite snack when I'm eating. It's probably the most boring thing in the world. I like toast. I like a piece of toast and a good strong coffee, and I can go for quite a while.
Okay, that works too.
Yeah.
Yeah. What's one thing that you always edit out of your writing?
I feel.
I feel.
I think I always want to get closer to characters, especially if it's a first person. That character doesn't. We're not sitting here together thinking, "I'm thinking about this." We just think about it, or "I'm feeling this." That's something I need to always edit out.
Oh, that's interesting.
Just to get closer in point of view, very much closer in point of view.
Wow. If the Hive had a theme song, what would it be?
Oh my goodness. It would definitely be something by Casey Musgraves.
Oh.
Now I'm singing all of her songs in my head, which I am not going to do for you, rather than actually remembering all of, I think anything by Casey Musgraves would definitely be the soundtrack to the Hive. I think they're listening to it too, all the sisters. I imagine the four sisters, just getting ready to go, to maybe the funeral. The funeral scene's really important. Music's always playing in my house.
If you weren't a writer, what job would you try?
Well, I'm a professor, so I guess I would stick with that one. I love being a professor. I love being a teacher.
Yeah.
I was a teacher long before I was a writer. I taught high school. I taught middle school. Yeah. And then,
how does teaching? Sorry, this isn't part of the rapid fire questions, but how does teaching kind of feed your writing? Like, how does it influence your writing?
I think it is the absolute honor of my life. I mean, what I get to do is amazing. People bring me their stories, and I get to read them with them, talk to them and ask them what they most want to say, and what they most want to do, like what's their purpose in writing. And then I get to help them make that story better.
Yeah.
And then I get to talk to them about books, and I get to listen to them. My best mentors were listeners. And I think students will tell you so much. Writers will tell you so much if you're listening more than you're talking.
Yeah.
And I think that's true of characters too. I think it's true of readers in a bookstore. And I think that is my favorite job, actually, is being a teacher. I've been teaching for almost 30 years, and I'm still amazed at the magic that can happen in a community, in a classroom where people are invested in each other's stories. And there's there's the question, can you teach writing? I can teach craft, right? I can teach the difference in point of views. I can teach the difference in what a present tense book will do versus a past tense book. And I can teach structure. I mean, structure is actually probably the thing that I feel like I'm best at teaching in a short story. In mapping a novel, that's what I know how to do, is create different containers. And to me, that's always the question of switching between genres also, right? I'm a poet and I'm a novelist and I write essays. And what is the thing I'm trying to say, and what's the best container in order for me to say it? Sometimes, often, that means that I write it first in the wrong container. I wrote the poetry collection that's coming out in the fall. I first wrote as flash fiction, sort of as memoir pieces, not fiction, but memoir pieces, more as vignettes. And then I realized that the story was not as interesting as the colors and the sound and the poetry on the page. A lot of my work begins in a different genre and then moves into the right one that it needs to be. Oh, I'm not sure if I answered that question, though.
No, I think you definitely did.
Okay.
If you...
Oh, wait, no, I'd actually be a stand-up comedian.
A stand-up comedian? Really?
That's my next goal. After I'm done being a professor, and then I won't ever be done being a writer, and I open the bookstore, I'm going to become a stand-up comedian.
Oh.
And also, that's what I'm going to do.
That'll be a good, interesting way
it's a lot like teaching.
To attract people to the bookstore. And finally, what's the best compliment that a reader could give you?
Oh, that's easy. I saw myself on these pages, like you told my story. And that you can ride that for years. One reader walking up to your table and asking you to sign a book and saying, this is where I saw myself. It is so powerful to see yourself on the page. Yeah. I mean, I don't read for that reason. I usually read to see other people on the page, something much larger than my perspective. I think there are entire worlds I will never get to inhabit, but I can understand their experience, especially if it's so different than mine from a book. But it means so much to me when someone says, I saw myself in this work. How did you know to write my story? That's the biggest compliment.
Yeah, and I think that's for me personally. That's why I read. It's not necessarily I have to see myself in the page, but even if it's the character is completely different than me or has lived a completely different life, there's still an element that you can connect with, and that's when, of course, you have a good book and a good writer. So
A good book and also a new way of experiencing your own humanity.
Yeah.
Right? Like you might be able to understand someone's point of view that you had originally dismissed.
Yes.
That to me is so powerful.
Yes.
Is to say, this is a person even I disagree with.
Yes.
But yet I can see their humanity. I think that's a real danger in not reading, is that you don't see other people's humanity.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's why reading creates empathy. And that's why it's so important.
It's the most important thing we have. And so are public libraries, where you can do all that reading.
Thank you. Thank you, Melissa, so much. Well, thank you for joining us on the podcast. It's been a pleasure talking to you and about your books and your life, and we look forward to the bookstore. For our listeners, be sure to check out Melissa Scholes Young's novels, Flood and The Hive. You can check them out at the library or at your favorite bookstore. Hopefully next year we'll be able to get it at your bookstore. So keep an eye out for her upcoming poetry collection and her latest work. Also, Saturday, October 24th, she will be having a writer's workshop at the Central Library. Thank you so much for agreeing to do that.
I'm so excited. I love talking about spreadsheets and structure.
So we do recommend that you register on our events page. I believe registration will start sometime in September. Keep an eye out on that. So thank you for listening, and we will see you next time on Turning the Page.
Okay, you want to tell us about some books?
All right. That was a good conversation with Melissa. I really enjoyed
It really
her.
was,
Yeah,
yes. I cannot wait for her bookstore next year.
Yes, I'm looking forward to that. I'm missing having a bookstore downtown.
Yes.
All right, so upcoming books in September to be on the lookout for. John Green. He, of course, is well known for his YA novels. He hasn't written in a very long time. He did write Everything is Tuberculosis, which is really good.
That was a fascinating
Yeah,
book.
that was his first nonfiction, but this is going to be his first adult book.
Nice.
It's called Hollywood Ending, and it's going to be published on September 22nd. So this is his first adult one. And then, of course, Emily St. John, she wrote Station 11.
Okay.
I mean, I'm not really a science fiction reader, but that was one of my favorite science fiction books. So she has one coming out called Exit Party on the 15th of September. So if you enjoyed Station 11, you should probably put this one on hold. Suspense and thrillers. Richard Osman is coming out with a second book in the We Solve Murder series called We Chase Shadows. So if you're a fan, click on that hold.
Place your holds now, people.
Yes.
Place your holds now.
And you should be able to from our website. Kate Atkinson, she is coming out with a book called Our Noble Selves. And this one is a historical fiction book that is, and I have this flagged as a to read because I'm a fan of Kate Atkinson. I love her books. Harry Flynn is a war correspondent, and he comes back to England from Singapore in 1945, and he joins this group that is kind of trying to change the image of England post-World War II. It's called the Festival of Britain, and he joins this big group of people to change the feel of England to more of like a lively feel. Yeah. And anyways, at this festival, there's a French woman that goes missing. She's murdered, and he's accused of her murder. So it is sort of like a crime historical novel.
Very cool.
Yeah, that one looks interesting. Of course, the most famous Rebecca Yarros is coming out with her book, Threshing Day. This has been marketed as part of the series, but not book 4.
Yes.
So this is kind of like a spinoff, basically, of the series. So
yeah, just some like in between stories that if you've read the 3 previous, you will enjoy. But again, we will stress it is not book 4.
It's not book 4. So yeah, that one is going to be a big one. Another big one that is coming up for us locally here is, of course, Governor Andy Beshear's book coming out on September 22nd. It is called Go and Do Likewise: How We Heal a Broken Country. So this is just it's not, I don't think it's necessarily a memoir, but just a memoir of his life as a politician and as a governor of Kentucky. So that is what's coming up for September. So yeah,
we've got quite the list. Yeah,
lots and lots of books coming out. So keep an eye out on our catalog for more information. That's it. So what do we've got coming up in terms of?
Do you want to tell us about something really big and special that is coming up that we're going to announce actually pretty soon?
Yeah. So as of recording, we haven't announced this, but I think we're going to release this post-announcement.
Yes.
So of course, we try to hold community reads for Lexington every other year or so. Our previous one, Happiness Falls by Angie Kim, was we had a really good reception. So this year we are going to be doing the book James by Percival Everett. So we are so excited. There's going to be a series of book discussions at different locations. And then the Community Reads campaign is going to culminate in October with an author visit by Percival Everett. So that's really, really exciting. We are doing it in partnership with the University of Kentucky. And so we are really happy to work with them to bring Percival Everett to Lexington. He did actually teach at UK way back when. So he's got some connections here to the city. And I think it'll be really interesting to hear about his writing and inspiration for James and his other work. So be on the lookout for that for more information. And I think I hope you guys get to participate in one of the book discussions in the program. So yeah.
That'll be exciting. And I just want to highlight this month all of the book clubs that we have. Mm-hmm. We have so many new book clubs that are coming up. Yep. You can find them on our website. You can go to the reading services page to just see the book clubs. You can also just search book clubs. Anything you like to read, we have a club for it. Yep. So check us out. Come visit. Find people who like the same books you do. It'll be very, very fun.
Yeah, we do have a lovely selection. So you've got ones that are specific to genres.
Yep.
We've got one that's just about cats called the Check Me Out book club at Beaumont. And we have 2 new book clubs that are going to start soon. Again, keep an eye out on our events page for some fun times.
You'll find them. Just search book clubs and they'll pop up.
Yeah, it's a good way to connect with fellow readers that are, enjoying the same books that you are.
Yes.
Welcome back to Behind the Scenes. Today I'm speaking with Mora, Program Evaluator for Lexington Public Library. All right, welcome, Mora. Thanks for sitting down with me.
Absolutely. Thanks so much for having me.
So to start us off, tell us what a Program Evaluator is.
It's a great question. It's a role that's relatively new to libraries, and the core of it is trying to understand what goes right and what we can do better, and then sharing those insights to support decision making. And so it's the combination of data analysis, storytelling, and social science that we do here at the library to transform those data and stories to improve our decision making. I often explain my work and the types of questions I ask and answer. The library provides many things to many different people. And so I live in the space of answering things like, what are our community's needs and how do we respond to them? And is our work making a difference? And how do we know?
Awesome. So what kind of data goes into evaluating a program?
Absolutely. It really depends on what we want to know. Each evaluation has those specific tools or approaches we'll use. Some things people may be familiar with that are evaluations are needs assessments or cost-benefit analyses. And so collecting, analyzing, and interpreting data is part of every evaluation we'll do. So I'll use sources like library data for checkouts and visits or the census for community trends. But the task of evaluation is to integrate all of that data that doesn't really seem to go together and find out what it tells us. What are those common themes? And so often in the library, we want to understand outcomes. And so with that specific question, it's the impact of participating in a program or what's changed for people as a result of using our services. And so in those instances, we want to directly engage our community members, and those stories are viewed as data. And that lets us center the voices of those we intend to serve. So things like surveys, focus groups, or interviews will help to answer those questions.
Great. What does a typical day look like for you?
Yeah, my work is very project-based, so every day's different. I'm always in a cycle of doing, reflecting, and starting anew, and multiple irons in the fire at different points. So at any given day, I'll be designing surveys, facilitating focus groups, coding and analyzing data, and then, of course, making those reports and presentations to share our findings. I also get the chance to lead and support internal projects for our Strategic Initiatives Department. And part of that is collaborating with our brilliant branch staff, doing things like beta testing or gathering feedback on upcoming initiatives. And that's a highlight of my job for sure.
Awesome. I had no idea about the beta testing part. That's really cool. Can you give us an example of something that you've beta tested that has come to fruition?
Absolutely. We've been working on revamping some of the ways we collect data, program data in Communico, specifically for outreach, because we know our staff impacts the community in many different ways. And so how to pin down exactly what we're doing with whether it's a story time, enrichment activity at schools, care centers, there's a whole host of different opportunities that our staff bring library services out into the community to meet those needs. And so piloting those with certain staff groups to make sure that they make sense and relate to their work is an example of that. So outreach is a good example. Yeah.
Very cool. So what is your favorite part of your workday?
I love engaging our community members. I love hearing about their experiences, their needs, and, their hopes for the library. I think I'm in a unique position where I get to hear that often, what the library means to people and what else they need from us. And so I'm very thankful for their trust. I also love when I get to see our evaluation findings being used, because then the work takes on a new life of its own. My job is not to write a report that then sits on a shelf. The work is to empower leadership and staff with that greater understanding and support them acting on those findings to improve public service. And so whenever I see programs take on a new shape or something new be offered as a result of evaluation, it's really fulfilling.
That's great. And then finally, because we are a bookish podcast, what are you reading?
Yeah, so I tend to read 2 books at a time, one fiction and one nonfiction. And I'm on a Japanese literary fiction stint. So I just finished Kitchen by Banana Yoshimoto, and it was such a tender story about love and family. The story opens with the main character. She's navigating the raw grief of having her grandmother who raised her recently pass away. And she's taken in by a friend, and we see her form her improvised family. And it was just a really ethereal story exploring love and who we become after loss. It was written in 1988, but is so timeless. And so I would really recommend that for anyone. For nonfiction, I've recently been playing a game called Anthropium, and it's like Wordle, but for art history. I'm not sure if you've heard of it. It's really neat. And so each day you'll have different artifacts and try and plot where and when in the world they took place. Super neat. And so it's really
cool.
Yeah, it's super fun. So it's piqued my curiosity about different materials throughout history, like clay, metal, wood, scrolls. And so I'm starting this book about paper. It's called Paging Through History by Mark Kurlansky, and it traces paper's origins in ancient China to today in global literacy, art, and the economy, and explores if paper's here to stay. And the answer is yes. So
Great.
Yeah, very neat.
That is really cool. Well, thank you so much for joining me, Mora. It's been really fascinating to hear about your work.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Erin.
Thank you for tuning in to Turning the Page. If you enjoyed listening, there will be more to come, so please give us a follow so that you don't miss the next episode.
We're available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, and wherever you get your podcasts.